Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and TechAdvice.life video interview. I'm joined today by Naji Halabi. He's a company director at experienced and bespoke Swiss watch distribution company, HBP Milestone, which is also the founder of the Artisans of Time Sydney International Watch Fair. Naji, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex. Good to see you.
Thank you for taking the time. Now, Naji, when was the first Sydney International Watch Fair and what was the reaction from its discerning visitors?
The first Sydney International Watch Fair took place in December 2022 at the Intercontinental in Sydney. It was an amazing fair. We had five watch brands. We had many watch collectors, aficionados, and it was very successful. It encouraged us to organize the second watch fair on a much bigger scale. We have more than double the brands. It will be much bigger and much more interesting.
Wonderful. Now, with inexpensive watches having gone digital decades ago and smartwatches having taken over the digital watches mantle, what does a luxury Swiss watch represent today?
The digital watches are not in contradiction with the classic watches. They work hand in hand. We see many watch collectors who actually have got Apple watches on their wrists or Samsung watches, and at the same time, they've got the classic collection and a big collection of watches. So they're not in contradiction with each other. They work together.
So with the Swiss luxury watches, though, many of these are heirlooms that are handed down from generation to generation. They're even stores of value. I mean, many are like pieces of artwork. So, I mean, it's much more than just a simple watch for many of the collectors, isn't it?
It is much more, of course, because firstly, you're investing money in an expensive watch. So you expect its value at least to increase in time, but most importantly, to pass it on to the next generation. All of the watches that are going to be at the watch fair are going to be such watches, important pieces, expensive pieces that will retain their value. There'll be investment pieces that will be passed on to the next generation.
And these are not mass produced like you might find from some brands. A lot of these are bespoke and manufactured in limited quantities and often by hand.
All of them are in small quantities. We are going to exhibit Swiss independent watch brands. Smaller brands, they produce smaller quantities. Altogether, the 9 brands that will be present at the fair, altogether will be about 4,000 watches maximum. If you consider the totality of the Swiss watch production, to give an example, it's estimated that Rolex produces over 1 million watches a year. The Swatch also over 1 million. So if you consider the probability of having one of those independent Swiss watches on your wrist and finding somebody next to you having the same watch is you've got more chances to winning the lotto.
So what are some other interesting facts and figures about the Swiss luxury watchmaking industry?
Well, consider that the watch production of, say, 2 million watches a year and more. The population in the US, which is the number one market for watches, Swiss watches, is 340 million people. The next watch market is China, with about 1.5 billion people. Then you've got, of course, India, Europe, and Africa. So the chances of owning a Swiss watch or this watch industry servicing all those clients is minimal. They can absorb the entirety of the Swiss watch industry 10 times over. If you put that aside and you consider the independent watchmakers that produce, like one of the brands makes 90 watches a year, another one makes 500 only a year, then it's like not 0.1 of a percentage of only one of those watches.
Yeah. Now, I did have an interview with Stephanie Richard from Rebellion Timepieces, and that was an incredible interview. It's going to be in the same article that this video will be embedded into, and they're the official timekeeper for the Dakar Rally. They have Ronaldinho, the famous Brazilian soccer player, as their ambassador, and they're also working with the Alfa Romeo F1 team. But one of the other brands that will be there is Arnold and Son, and they have a fascinating bit of history that dovetails beautifully with Australia. Can you please tell us about that?
Well, Arnold Son was founded in 1764 by an English watchmaker called John Arnold. He was a very talented watchmaker who traveled to the Netherlands at age 19 and returned to England speaking perfect German. And that stood him apart in the court because at the time George III was from the Hanover family. And he was commissioned to help build the marine chronometer to enable the British navigators and the British Navy to navigate more safely and accurately to destination. And he produced the first one of the first chronometers that assisted Captain Cook during his voyages and the second voyages where he visited Australia.
Wow, that is a momentous bit of history that most people probably don't know about.
Yes, most of the brands have got good history behind them.
Yeah, while we are talking about the Swiss watchmaking industry, which has been around for hundreds of years, so no doubt there's plenty more interesting stories that people will discover. I mean, that makes me wonder, what else do we need to know about the Sydney International Watch Fair and where people can go to register to attend the event? Because as I've read, it's exclusive and only a small number of people will be allowed into the event at any one time. You need to make an appointment.
The watch fair will be at the Intercontinental Double Bay from the 2nd to the 4th of November. It's over 3 days, but spaces are limited. There'll be probably enough space for maybe 300 people all up. So it's important to go to the website, sydneyinternationalwatchfair.com.au, and register on time, and to enable one to visit and speak to each of the brands and learn about them, look at the watches, touch them, feel them, and discover them and discover the history of them.
One of the things that's amazing about the Swiss luxury watches as well is that the precision and the materials that are in use today, some of these were impossible to manufacture or work with some decades or hundreds of years ago. And yet today we have this incredible precision that is enabling new types of mechanical watches that we just haven't seen before.
Yes, it is. Computer-wise, we are at an age now that we are not even 50 years ago, even 30 years ago. The fact that we're talking and seeing each other at the same time was science fiction in the 1960s, 70s, even the 80s. I remember the first mobile phone was a big box.
Yeah.
And to be able to have just like a smartphone is just amazing. And computer-wise, it has evolved a lot. At the same time, watch design has evolved a lot with the help of computers. We're at the cutting edge of technology in watches and design, and watchmakers are able to design watches that were impossible only 20 years ago. 30 years ago were science fiction, to be able to do those magnificent designs, to incorporate colors, shapes, design, and most importantly, to do different materials like titanium powder, carbon fiber, are just amazing. One of the watches, Arnold Son, for example, is calibrated for 122 years for the moon phase. It's quite an achievement.
Absolutely. And of course, with these independent Swiss watch brands, they can incorporate and personalize watches to a degree that someone like Rolex would never consider. What are some of the things that they can do with, little diamonds or other things that people might want these watchmakers to customize their watches with?
This is one of the particularities of Swiss independent watchmakers, is you're talking to the watchmaker himself. He's usually a person who is totally passionate about his art, and he's always listening to his clients, to the collectors, and they keep their ears open to suggestion if a collector wants something particular in a watch, like say a diamond they inherited from their family, and that diamond placed in the movement or placed on the dial, or the name of their kids on the movement. They're usually able to accommodate, whereas the big industrial watches will never consider such a thing.
Yeah, incredible. Now, before we get to the end of the interview, I always like to ask the people that I'm speaking with a couple of questions about their own history in the world of tech. And so, can I please ask you to share a memory of your first computer?
I would, but if I did, I would divulge my age. Um, my first computer was a PC. I believe it was a Commodore PET, which I
Yeah,
saw in the Science Museum in London. I was astonished to find it there, and I thought, my God, what is it doing there? Can I actually go and touch it and play with this computer? It was an amazing feeling to see it in a museum. That was the first PC I had, the Commodore PET, the
yeah.
one that has a cassette on the side.
Yeah, I remember that from Buck Rogers and the 25th Century, and it had this very sort of almost a triangular kind of shape, and the monitor was built in. And at the time, there was the Apple One, and the computer that my father bought me, which was the Exidy Sorcerer, an American computer. But yeah, that was before the IBM PC, before the DOS and Windows revolution that a lot of younger people would have no idea about. So
Yes.
amazing memories of the earliest, almost the earliest times of modern computing anyway. My second last question is to ask if you could please share some of the best advice that you've received in life to help you get where you are today.
Well, the one I've learned the hard way is never cut corners. It will come back and bite you eventually. So never cut corners. That's
Yeah.
probably the basic advice.
Yeah, my father's uncle always used to say, measure twice and cut once. And I was speaking to a founder of a battery company, and he said that his advice was that you need to always do things the right way, or you'll have to do them again.
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
That was a good advice.
Yeah. So, what is your final message to the viewers and readers and those who would like to visit the Sydney International Watch Fair in early November?
It's a unique opportunity to come and see all those watches, to be able to experience the watches, to learn about them, because the collection that will be coming to Sydney will probably not come again. And these are watches that mostly not visible in the Australian market, apart three of them that have got retailers. The other six are not in shops, so you'll not see them anywhere else. So it's a big opportunity to come and talk to the brands, talk to the passionate people who will explain the watches, the history of the watches, meet collectors, uh, meet fellow aficionados in a nice environment. So I would say register fast.
Yeah. And I know that there's going to be the $1 million watch from Rebellion Timepieces. So that's just one of the many watches that will be on display. Although when I say many, obviously a limited quantity. So I look forward to seeing you there, Naji. And I thank you for taking the time to join me today and to tell us a bit more about the Sydney International Watch Fair. So thank you. And
Yeah,
I'll see you later.
look forward to seeing you. Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome. Bye bye.